Hello, greetings to you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our visitors and viewers tapping into this week's Black Mental Health Matters show, where we engage in conversation to deepen our learning about mental health challenges that are impacting the Black global community. I am your host, Rihanna Ebanks Bab, and today we will be delving into discussion about depression and poor mental health in teenagers. So make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned because I will return and introduce our amazing panel. See you shortly. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Those of you that missed my intro first time around, my name is Rihanna Ebanks Bab, and I'm your host today for this week's show of Black Mental Health Matters. We will be discussing depression and poor mental health in teenagers. And we will be joined by our first guest, Jarrell Bempong, who specializes in psychotherapy that is culturally conscious, specifically for Black Brits living in the UK. I will bring on Jarrell as our first guest. Welcome, Jarrell. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. And welcome to the Black Mental Health Matters platform. Please introduce yourself to our guests and our show.
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure. So I'm Jarrell Bempong, and I'm a psychotherapist, a speaker, and a trainer. And I focus on working with exclusively Black people because I believe that we're the most underserved cultural group in the UK, and that's my passion. So that's what I do.
Amazing. Thank you. And welcome to this space. Next up, we have Jasmine James. And Jasmine is a mental health enthusiast and a therapy student. I will bring on Jasmine just now.
Hello.
Hi, Jasmine. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you very much. And again, please introduce yourself to our viewers and our guests.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jasmine James. I'm currently a student studying holistic mental wellness, and I'll be going on to study licensed clinical psychology in the future. I currently work with Black people as well with just learning about mental health in our communities. I worked in a school for a long time, so I was definitely working with a children population, but now I'm going to expand that and work with people my age and older as well.
Amazing, amazing. And welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. Next up, we have Bosede Oyelakin. And Bosede is a mental health counselor who specializes in psychotherapy for men, women, and children. I'll bring on Bosede now. Welcome, welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi Rihanna.
Wonderful. Welcome, Bosede. Please introduce yourself to our viewers and our guests today.
Thank you very much, Rihanna. My name is Bosede Ilaki. I'm a mental health therapist, and I provide mental health services to men, women, and children.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And we are also going to be joined by Abby Oni, and she is a psychotherapist and trauma therapist who works with adults overcoming childhood trauma. And welcome to the space, Abby. Please introduce yourself to our viewers and guests.
Hello, Rihanna. Good evening from here. My name is Abigail Uni. I'm a psychologist in training with focus on clinical and health psychology, a psychotherapist, as well as a trauma therapist working with adults in relation to childhood trauma, PTSD, depression, as well as life issues. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate you all taking time out to have this well-needed conversation about issues that are impacting our young teenagers. I myself, I'm a mother to a teenager, so this is something that's very close to my heart, ensuring that our Black young boys and girls are having the support that they need, but also opening up those well-needed conversations to better understand what they're going through and how to alleviate some of these issues. So let's kick off the show with our first question. And this will be to, who should I direct this to? Let's go with Jarrell. So Jarrell, in your opinion, what is depression and how is this presented in children and teenagers?
Okay, so from my perspective, depression it really comes from an underlying irrational belief system that we hold, and we form our belief systems as we're developing and growing up, right? And we get them from our primary caregivers, who are our parents, our grandparents, our teachers, people like that. So sometimes the messages passed on to us cause us to process information irrationally or wrong, and that triggers an effect, because depression being an unhealthy negative emotion, it in itself, so the healthy version of it would be something like sadness, which is temporary, it's passing. So let's say you have a pet cat and your cat gets run over, you're going to feel sad for a while, but you're not going to be sad about it for months and months and months and months on end, and crying and not going to work and not having the energy to do anything or the motivation to do anything. It's a passing thing. So sadness becomes depression when it's extended over a period of time, and it has that irrational belief element attached to it that makes it unshakable.
It's powerful. Thank you very much for that. Would anyone like to add anything to that? Abigail, Bodese, Jasmine, what would you consider a terminology of depression, and how is it presented in children and teenagers? Let's go with Bosede.
Okay, thank you, Rihanna. I would like to say that it's a strong emotional feeling that keeps one from approaching their day-to-day activities. So like Jarrell mentioned, it could begin from sadness, but for some persons, it's also easy, very easy to mask any feeling of depression. You see them smiling on the outside. Even with children, we might feel that, okay, this can happen much more with adults, but even with children, for some children, it might not be expressed, or for teenagers, it might not be expressed as feelings of sadness or hopelessness. Like, these are the common symptoms of depression. It could be that the child could be aggressive, the child could be rebellious, the child could also withdraw, the child could be crying. So I would say that any strong emotional feeling that holds back a child from functioning daily. The child does not want to go to school, the child does not want to mix with friends. Like I said earlier, the child is rebellious, the child is aggressive, there's constant emotional outbursts. I would say that this I can liken to depression in children and teenagers.
Thank you, and I can see definitely how it links back to specifically what Jarrell mentioned about the belief system as well, because yeah, you may believe that you hold a certain persona about yourself, and then that in itself, where you're trying to enact that persona or live up to that persona, can also depreciate on what you think of yourself, what others think of you, and how you live up to those kind of expectations as well. So, thank you very much. Jasmine, would you like to add anything to this question?
Yes, I would. I would just first like to say I agree with everyone that's already spoken, and wanted to emphasize on how Jarrell said when the sadness turns into long-term and interrupting your daily functioning. I think that a lot of time with teenagers, it can present itself in anger as well, just because in those developmental stages, they may not know how to vocalize like I'm feeling sad, and so that gets a lot of confusion inside of them, and it can turn into anger. And that can be also presented in like, you know, doing bad in school, conflicts with your family, conflicts in school systems or with authority figures. So I think that's another thing that is shown a lot in teenagers when they have depression.
Yeah, that's very, very great point. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Can I slightly add to that and slightly, you know?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So when it comes to the emotions with my work, it's really important to really name them very clearly and have clear definitions of what they are, to give people the emotional vocabulary to process the emotion themselves. So for example, where I'm from in Ghana, when the word for a plane is metal bird,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
We had to construct something for it to make sense.
Mm.
Otherwise, we couldn't even rationalize it, you know? So in order for us to be able to process our emotions, it's really important for us to name them very clearly. And the more we get used to the practice of naming them clearly and recognizing the emotions that come with it and the physical responses that come with it and the triggers and all of that, the more we're able to get on top of it and experience the healthy version of emotions, because we have healthy negative emotions too. So sadness is a healthy negative emotion. My cat died. I'm supposed to be sad. I'm not supposed to be like happy and nonchalant about it, you know? So there's a healthy negative emotion that can be felt. But when it comes to depression and anger, I see them as separate. So I'll see them as a meta emotion. So an emotion that triggers another emotion, you know? So anxiety and depression usually walk hand in hand. I call them, you know, the twins. You know,
That's
because
true.
if you're treating someone for one, you're more likely going to uncover the other as you go along, because you become anxious about being depressed and then depressed about being anxious and anxious about being depressed, and then it compounds itself, right?
Yeah.
So
It becomes like a
the same with
feedback loop.
anger in teenagers, because they're angsty, right? Hormone. You know, their body's changing. Everything's so confusing, so frustrating. They don't have the emotional vocabulary yet. They don't have the emotional intelligence yet. You know, so the anger is a meta emotion that results from the depression. But they're not the same.
Yeah.
So we'll treat anger in a separate manner, and we'll treat the depression in a separate manner. You know, but we'll identify them as separate, but intertwined and interrelated, you know?
Yeah. No, it's very important, specifically what you mentioned about naming it as well, because I find that a lot of emotional suppression and repression is the inability to understand and navigate those difficult emotions when they do arise. So being able to actually name that this is what I'm feeling would enable someone like yourselves to be able to know what is the best intervention to propose for that individual. So Abby, do you have anything else to add to this?
Yes, I do. Thank you for asking me to. So I also discovered that some of the challenges that comes with identifying if a teenager is depressed greatly has to do with the pubertal changes. So before the 20th century, the onset of puberty was around 16 years, right? In the 20th century, it came down to 14 years. And now in the 21st century, we're dealing with 8-year-olds dealing with puberty, having bodily changes. And as such, with all of these ranging hormones, it's quite hard for them to actually understand how they feel. So a lot of emotions get mixed up, like Jarrell said, and naming or labeling each of these emotions help for them to understand what's going on. But now the role of the parent is important in this regard. And I have to say this because if they don't find an enabling environment to actually express themselves, if they don't have an enabling environment to showcase their emotions, whether they want to withdraw, whether they want to talk to someone, whether they are sad, or they don't feel like playing or doing anything, an enabling environment will let the person, the caregiver, to observe and know that something is wrong somewhere. So at the end of the day, we're still going back to the home where they're coming from, and we just hope that the parents will observe and identify that there's something going on, and they can differentiate between the regular reaction and emotions that comes with puberty and being a teenager, with the other ones that are much more deeper. Example, Jarrell said, like losing a cat. But you lost your cat, and then you're thinking about it. Okay, I'm sad. Maybe 1 or 2, 3 days you should be fine. You could also get a replacement. But when it's something that lingers for weeks on end, and it's irrational, and it's not just affecting you, your daily activities, it's affecting the people around you, then you know that something is wrong. And then clinically, of course, we have to observe the symptoms 6 weeks and above. When it's happening every other day consistently, we can now clinically diagnose someone of depression. Other than that, we're just talking based on the symptoms we see. So that is also important. The child needs to go for an evaluation, an assessment, before we can say you or depressed.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And you mentioned something that I'm going to circle back on. I'm going to try and remember it, but you mentioned about caregivers and somewhat of having that nourishing and nurturing environment to be able to express it. I'm going to remember that point. I'm going to come back to that later on in the show with another follow-up question for that. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next one, and this one's going to be directed at you, Bosede. What are some of the main issues that you're seeing that are impacting Black children and teenagers at the moment?
Okay, thank you, Rihanna. First off, I'll say body image, the ability to understand, the changes, because of course it's adolescence, it's puberty, and a lot is going on mentally and emotionally. So, and then some of these changes play out in the, in their body, like in their growth, the ability for them to understand. 2 years ago or just last year, I was this height, and I can see changes all over me. Maybe my voice has changed for a boy child, and then for the girl child, I'm becoming more curvy and all that. So the ability to deal with this is usually a challenge for adolescents based on my experience, and peer pressure, or I would say acceptance by their friends, or the ability to mingle with their friends. So now as children, let's say from age 10 downwards, children are friendly practically with everyone. I would say. So, but from adolescent stage, from puberty, you find out that they want to be selective. They want to be careful the kind of friends that they keep. And they want to be careful with the kind of children they identify with. This could be based on their interest. It could also be based on the fact that they have observed these changes. The kind of thoughts they are beginning to have is different from the thoughts that they usually have when they were children. They are more careful about their looks. They are more careful about who they roll with, who they mix with. They are more sensitive to what you say to them. Or like children that, okay, after crying, they might forget about it, but they are more sensitive. If you talk about their body, if you talk about their academic performance, so all of this, I would say, affects adolescents. It affects them, and these are the changes these are the challenges rather that I would say they battle with. And of course, the fact that some children cannot understand why they will be in an environment in a school where their parents cannot afford. I would always say that. I saw that as a lot working as a school counselor. I mean, the segregation is there. We know that we are all in the same school environment. I mean, this school is for the high class, but we also know that we still have, we have circles, we have, people that their class is actually higher than others. And how can they factor this? How do they measure this? When they talk about going for vacations, when they talk about what they wear, when they talk about where they live. So I live in Nigeria. I'm in Nigeria, and then I'm based in Lagos. So we have some places in Lagos where you know that people who, I would say, they are the high caliber, or the celebrities, they live in these places. So if you are in this school environment and you mention that you stay here, the children know that no, something is not adding up. Like they can tell maybe the places that parents of those children work, or probably what they earn. And they segregate these children. It's enough that they're already dealing with pressure from friends, pressure from teachers, pressure from maybe their parents to even do well. To even do well. But now they have to deal with the fact that they have to be in this school environment because their parents want them to, and then it's quite a lot for them.
Thank you for that very valuable and insightful contribution, because I think especially like living in the UK, things are very different here, but you can see in regards to like areas of affluence, you can see the differences. But because schooling is free here, it's more around looking at the difference between public schools, private schools, foundation schools, in that kind of sense. So Abby, would you like to add anything to that?
All right. I'll just I agree with everything Kosede said. I'll just come from the angle of the peer pressure and trying to fit in. I remember towards the first quarter of this year, we carried out a mental health campaign around schools, private and public schools in the FCT. The FCT is the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria. And the fallout from that was cringeworthy. As a parent, it really, really saddened my heart. Majority of the questions we got were from 10, 12, 13 to 15 years. And the things they were saying were quite alarming. Now, this student tries so hard to fit in. They try so hard because they don't want to be the odd one out. Like she talked about the bodily changes. So I discovered that I'm beginning to have breasts, and the other person is not having breast yet. 3 other people in the class are not having breast yet. And there's another set of people, girls that have started developing breast and they're wearing bra. And there's how they work, there's how they carry themselves. Because, if you can take your mind back, Rihanna, Bosede, and Jasmine, when you started developing breast, there was this feeling that came with it. When you put on bra and then you wear your clothes, you actually look different, right? So they are dealing with these emotions, and then they just want to belong to the other group of people who are like them, who are beginning to, have some of these bodily changes. And then if they were not part of the cool kids, what happens is that they'll be left behind, they'll be in the middle. These other set of people are not developing breast, and I am, but I can't fit in with these other guys because they are the cool guys, and I'm not part of the cool guys. So these other people are not accepting me because I'm not like them. They are not wearing braziers like me, and they're feeling left out of the fun because they are yet to see their menstruation. They're yet to have breasts. So there's a war going on. So in a bid to, to figure out themselves, you see them reverting back to bad habits. All right. For some of them that are exposed to social media, they go on social media to try to find where they can fit in. it's like you're under the rain, and the rain is beating you so hard, and you're so cold. You just want shelter. That's all you want. And so that's the feeling that comes up. As such, they make mistakes. They get into the wrong group on social media. And they start sending some of their pictures that are not, out there, because they want someone that could accept them, that will tell them that what is happening to you is normal and you're perfectly okay. That's just what they want to hear. And they're not getting that from home, because some of their parents don't even have the time to observe that something is going on here. I remember when I had my period, I was 13 years old. And I walked up to my mom, who wasn't informed. She didn't know what to say to me. And I told her, I just showed her my card. And she said, "Why are you showing me this? What am I going to do with this? Take this away, take this away." So just imagine how many parents are like that. And I can tell you from all the questions, the survey we did, these were the fallout. And so these are the things we're dealing with here in this country. As such, these children, they just go haywire. They are caught between hell and high waters. At home, everything is not so okay. No one is listening to them. In the school, they don't perfectly fit in. And if they fit in somewhere, it comes with conditions. You have to do a certain thing. You have to dress a certain way. You have to stop after school. You have to meet at the backyard to do some certain things with your phone. You must have this type of phone. And that goes back to the segregation bus that they talked about.
Yeah.
There's this particular school that is in the highbrow area. And for some of the girls to fit in, what they were saying is that they agree that all of them must have iPhone 13. iPhone 13 is quite expensive over here. So in order to fit in and be accepted, you need that phone. So they end up going back home to lie to their parents. Mind you, we trained the children, we trained the teachers, and then during the PTA meeting, we talked to the parents. So we brought all the questions and the things we analyzed from the students, we brought it to the PTA meeting to talk to the parents so that there will be a connection, right? And some parents were like, "Oh, is that why my daughter came home and asked for money for XYZ? Is it because she wanted to get iPhone? Is it because she wanted to get what's that other one you put in your ear? What's that small one you put in your ear? iPod." Yes. Yeah. Even as an adult, I don't have that, I only have the Bluetooth. So
I can relate to that.
So these are the things that they are dealing with, and it can be so overwhelming, and it's crazy.
I appreciate that. And yeah, there's a lot of things you mentioned there that was relatable. Definitely from my own perspective, even trying to fit in, doing all kinds of things, asking for all kinds of things that, unfortunately my parents weren't able to accommodate financially. So, it not only puts pressure on me to try and fit in, but puts pressure on them to want to fulfill their parental duties to me. But yeah, definitely can relate. But I want to throw this over to Jasmine to kind of get a US perspective on this. What are some of the main issues impacting Black children over where you are?
Yes, I think that social media is very big. And I love when Abby brought that up, because not only are teenagers still developing, their sense of identity, but social media is so accessible just in general. Like I see 6-year-olds knowing how to get on iPads and get on Instagram and TikTok and stuff. So in the teenage years, you're forming your sense of identity, and you're also on these social media apps where you have a subconscious type of comparison, whether, you're trying to or not. You're on there 24/7. You're seeing other people. You're saying, "I don't look like that," or "I don't dress like that," or I can't afford that type of outfit or that type of hairstyle. And it makes you feel some type of way. It'll make a young person say, "Well, I guess I'm not accepted if I don't have this, or I don't fit in if I don't have this." And you see people all over the world in different social groups that aren't like you. And I think that's a very big impact on social media, especially if it's not regulated. There are some households, of course, that regulate social media use and, monitor their kids' usage of their cell phones and stuff. But I know that a lot of people don't have it. I taught second grade last year, and my second graders, would have cell phones and would be texting people and on
Wow.
Instagram, and I would ask them, like, does your parent know that you have
Wow.
They would say no. So it's like
Wow.
when you don't have that supervision, it can get very detrimental at a young age. I think back to when I was
Absolutely.
a teenager, and I'm 26, so I'm not so far away from teenage years. But when I was younger,
You're a young adult.
yes, I'm a young adult. When I was younger, like my dad, he would have set times for us where we could not be on the phone, we could not watch TV, we could not, be on our socials and stuff. We had to go outside and play. So it kind of, I'm very appreciative that he did that, because it kind of like gives me that separation, or gave me that separation from social media in a way, even though I still, of course, have it today. But if it's not heavily monitored, it can get detrimental. And I know some families, you have single parents, single mothers that work all the time. So sometimes it can't be monitored. So it can definitely be detrimental, in my opinion.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And that leads me so nicely into my next question. So Jarrell, I'll direct this one to you. What are some of the risks that technology, heightened media exposure, and easy access to inappropriate websites can have on depressed teenagers? And what advice do you have for parents to get them clued up on what to do?
Well, this one's a tricky one, because I always see technology as just a tool. A knife, right, can save your life or it can kill you.
Yeah.
Right. It depends on who's wielding it.
Right.
So I always refrain from, painting the social media as the problem. I think it's something else going on with the person that needs to be addressed before it even gets to the social media. You understand? And I think that comes from a generational degradation, of the Black identity, which has been handed down from ancestors down over hundreds and hundreds of years, that has never been really and truly processed or addressed, and that coupling with the idea that the mental health system was created not for Black people. None of our cultural identity was taken into account. After all, at the time that the white forefathers of mental health were developing the whole mental health system that we use today, the system that I was trained in, I'm sure the system that everyone else here is being trained in, Black people were seen as livestock or subhuman. So of course, none of our cultural identity was incorporated into the genesis, and then development and creation of the mental health system that we use. We're trying to use and adapt to support our Black people, our Black brothers and sisters. So I think the problem goes deeper. The social media is just a conduit, because after all, I advertise, I use social media, and I'd love children to go onto my social media and read it up, because it's about empowering them and letting them know that, their cultural identity too is important. So in that sense, is the social media bad or good? So it's about, that's where the parents can come in, because parents, it takes the parent to identify their own trauma that has been passed down from their parents, coupled with the lack of emotional intelligence to express themselves or express what they're going through, coupled with the communal, the communal kind of living system that Black people often have amongst us, where there's no such thing as an individual. So you're depressed. Oh, you're so lazy. Oh, you're so useless. Oh, you're so spoiled. That's usually the response to depression. I remember asking my mom and my grandma and my aunt and every, older generation Ghanaian woman that I could find. You should have seen me making all the calls. And I was like, what is the word for depression? Because I speak the language fluently. But I didn't know the word for depression. And every word that these people gave me was stuff like sadness, laziness, low energy. But that just belittles the whole thing completely. Because if you see it like that, then there's no hope to even begin to address the problem. So the fact, that's why I mentioned before, there's not even a word for the condition in our local dialects as Africans.
And that's beautifully coupled with what you said at the beginning about being able to name the pain, I guess, or name the emotion. And
Yes.
if there isn't the language in your dialect to be able to even do that, how are you meant to be able to name it?
Right. So these children are going on social media with their personal trauma from their identity crisis. They're suffering anxiety because their anxiety is fear of the future, right? And their future is uncertain. So they're anxious already, right? And then they're sad over a long period of time because of the anxiety, right? And the other things going on as well. And then all of these emotions are triggering them to act in a way that sometimes is, goes against the grain of people. So they get a negative response that they take as an attack on their personal domain. So they become angry about it. And then they take to social media with their anger, anxiety, childhood trauma, ancestral trauma, depression. And then they start looking for things in this mindset, this really low energy mindset, and what are you going to come across when you're focused on a particular kind of thing? If I decide I'm looking out for red cars, I will see the most red cars I've ever seen in a day ever in my life.
It's true. It's true. You attract what you focus on.
So if I'm angry, depressed, anxious, carrying the hurt and pain of the trauma, carrying the confusion of the identity crisis, and then I go on social media, which is very accessible to me. Am I going to look for someone like Jarrell who's talking consciousness and Black empowerment and mental health? No, I'm going to go look for suicide videos because that's the trend here now.
That's true.
Glamorizing suicide, making it cool. Oh, just cut yourself a little bit and you forget everything.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because there's been a real great issue of romanticizing poor mental health. And there's been a lot of trends that I've seen on TikTok that are quite disturbing, to be fair. The romanticizing of, self-injury, self-harm. And even when it comes down to some really difficult and extreme mental health conditions as well. But without digressing, this is definitely what I would consider some of the risks that are presented within easily accessible sites and where there's not a handle on the technology and the literacy around managing these devices from parents. So thank you for raising those very important points.
Just one thing, the technology, it would be impossible if a child wants to get on technology, they'll do it.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I was a child before. I was a child before and I did it. And I'm sure we all were, and we did it. It's just not very possible. What are you going to do? Put an age verification? They'll pass that. Double verification. They'll pass that. Parental lock. They'll pass.
And they're smart.
Yeah.
They're more tech savvy than we are.
Right.
So,
it's true. They teach us how to use the technology that we're trying to protect them from.
Yeah.
But does anyone else have anything to add to this question before we move on? Because that was definitely quite a lot of really valuable information you just shared there, Jarrell. Does anyone else have any more to add to that? No? Okay. Well, let's move on to the next question then. So,
can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you, Abby.
Okay, I did have something to add, but my internet has been fluctuating. Okay, I just wanted. Okay, you asked the latter part of the question. You said, "What can parents do?" Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What can parents do? Yeah. All right. Okay, so now I don't want the situation to look entirely hopeless, because I know Jarrell tried to paint the vivid picture of things, but I just want to give a little hope. What parents can do is to, first of all, understand that this generation is quite different from their own generation. As such, you can't parent them the same way you were parented.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're constantly unlearning and relearning better ways to be an intentional parent, which
Mm.
means as a family, you have to come up with a family media guide. And that's what I'm
Mm.
doing in my family. What is a family media guide? It's just a
Mm.
simple guide that dictates to what extent media can be used in the home, to what extent technology can be used in the home, from what time to what time, and then what are the activities that will keep the children engaged. Like
Yeah.
Jasmine said, her parents were able to bring a balance. What the parents did was just having a family media guide.
Mm.
Probably they didn't write it out, they didn't read it out to the children, but that's what your parents did, Jasmine. And then they gave
Mhm.
you a well balanced life. You were able to leave your gadgets and go outside and play in the natural environment
Mm.
to stimulate and work on your executive functioning skills. So,
Mhm.
what
Mm.
parents can do and caregivers is to come up with a family media guide. First of all, they need to understand that technology is not to be abused. Technology
Mm.
is not to dictate your life. It's just a tool. Like Jarrell said, it's a tool. And depending on how you use it, it could be functional or detrimental to you. So
Yeah.
now, from what time to what time can we watch television? From what age to what age are you allowed to have a phone? All
Mm.
right. And even when you have a phone, you need an adult consent to open some certain sites. And then,
Mm.
of course, Google is doing a good job. If you're watching Netflix, there are different parental controls, DSTV, and what have you. You put those controls and you put the password. And then you stipulate to what hour a technology can be used from this
Yeah.
time to this time. In between, you're going to be reading your books. No
Yeah.
matter how old they are, there should be an age appropriate activity for every member of the family.
Mm.
You don't bring your gadgets to the dining table. I mean,
Mhm.
I watch different movies, and of course, I've been outside Nigeria a couple of times where I see, teenagers with their smartphone. In South Korea, I was there for 6 months, and each
Mm.
time I commute to the university, at the bus stop, there are school age teenagers standing there with their smartphone.
Mm.
Their faces are down, and they're pressing the phone like this. And the boss is there just honking. So you don't bring your phone to the dining table. You
Yeah.
have to make sure that technology is not something that dictates your life. You have to be in control.
Mm.
So a family media guide would greatly help. But of course, a family media guide is not as strong as you having a family value. Most
Yeah.
of our families, we don't have a family value. We just go with the wind. We wake up, everybody have breakfast, go to school, I go to work, I come home, I cook. There is no purpose. As such, we're not intentional. We don't know
Mm.
where we're headed as a family. We don't have a family goal. We just believe we're existing in the world to eat, sleep, wake up, and repeat, rinse and repeat. So
Mm.
that has to change.
Mm.
And there is hope. Things are changing now. We are raising intentional parents who want to do better. So,
Mm.
for parents who are listening in, try to come up with a family value, have a family goal, have a mission, have a vision. Why are you together as a family? What do you hope to achieve? I mean,
Mm.
part of your educational goals would even mean that your children are to get educated up to a certain level, master's or PhD or what have you, before they get married. As such, everybody work together towards that goal.
Mhm.
And if that's the goal, trust me, it will eliminate a lot of other things. It will detect to how long someone is exposed to technology. It will
Yeah.
even determine whether you should be on social media or not. And
Yeah.
if you must be on social media, what is the benefits? What are
Yeah.
you there for? What do you have to contribute? These are salient questions you should discuss as a family. And
Yeah.
you notice that when you give these children the opportunity to be a part of these conversations, they are able to make informed decisions.
Yeah.
But when you leave it to chance, and that's what's happening now, then anything goes. And
Mhm.
when you say, drop your phone, why, mom? Why should I drop my phone? I'm already online. Why should I drop my phone? I'm chatting with my
Mm.
friends. And you have nothing else to say because you've not replaced technology with something meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to switch now.
Right.
We can't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result because that's the
Yeah.
definition of foolishness, if not madness.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And it's a really nice, beautiful, again, lead into the next question because there are a lot of conflicting values and expectations and societal expectations and norms that we can play into. So I will direct this question to Bosede. What role do you think these conflicts play in the prevalence of depression in Black teenagers?
Okay, thank you, Rihanna. So I was in and out of the meeting earlier, and I didn't want to just
It's
jump
okay.
into
Is your
the
connection all right
conversation.
at the moment?
Yes, it's better now.
Okay,
Yes,
wonderful.
it is. Yes. So I would say that the perception of an average African parent is that this is what I want. I'm a mother of two, and this is what I want. Probably, dreams, unaccomplished goals that I brought from my teenagehood, my young adulthood till this time that were unfulfilled. And then I can say that I want my children to live through my unfulfilled goals and visions. That is one. Then two, the society we are in, the climate that we are in, the perception of the community that we find ourselves. I mean, the African community or the Nigerian community. These are some of the conflicts that affect how an average African parent will perceive depression. So when I joined the conversation a few minutes ago, I heard Jarrell saying something about the African parent. If I'm to put my understanding of what he said into words, it's just some parents will just be like, oh, you're talking about depression. What have you been through? How old are you? What are the challenges that you are facing in life? They can't even understand. Like at 14, you're saying you're depressed. At 16, you're not paying the rent. You're not. What bills are you handling at the moment that would? What are the challenges you're facing that will push you into depression? So the perception of the average African parent, the community that we are in, our culture, our values, our cultural values, I would say. So you are a Nigerian, for example, you have to go to school. I still see some parents doing that, although I would say that some parents they have a change in mindset, but some parents are still doing it. I want my child to be a doctor. I want my child to be a nurse. I used to have the dream of becoming maybe an aeronautic engineer, and that dream was unfulfilled because of maybe funds or I didn't have proper guidance. And I want my child to do that. I can afford to send you to one of the best schools in the world, not even in Nigeria. So why won't you want to do that? And the child is like, Mommy, Daddy, I want to sing. You want to sing. There's no career, there's no future in singing, but they cannot relate to the fact that the interest, the future, the well-being of the child is very, very important. And probably because of what teenagers are faced with on social media, what they see others do, probably the child might have not formed a career path. Yes, it's quite possible that all of these influences are still affecting the child. Why not guide the child? Why not say that, okay, for now, just be open. Why not try, these options? Why not put yourself into one or two things and don't just bottle yourself into, music. Well, I'm going to enroll you in music classes. Maybe I'm going to have, an instructor for you, a vocal instructor for you. And then why you still try out some, academic professions or, career paths. But it is oftentimes like, it is what I want. I'm the one paying the fees, I'm the one that is going to pay the fees. I'm the one that is going to send you to school. And even the people around, the members of extended family, the immediate community, they're like, your father, your parents, this decision is like the best. You're even lucky. You're lucky that your parents are thinking, towards this line. Why not follow this? Why not go along with what your parents, want? So
Yeah.
all of these are some of the, the conflicting values that we have that can say that lead an average Nigerian child, an African child, I would say, to depression.
Mm. And do you know what's strange? I can definitely relate to a lot of that because I find creative arts as a somewhat of a taboo when it comes down to education and it being a formal education. But I think it's so vital to engage in some form of creative activity as a means of emotional expression. As a singer songwriter myself, I use that as my own personal tool for emotional balancing. So, Jasmine or Jarrell, even, what's your thoughts on some of the conflicts that that can really impact a child's mental health?
Yes. Did you want to go first?
No, you go.
Okay. So I was thinking about what in the US impacts Black children the most. And the first thing that came to my mind is just this is not a country that was built for us in general. So and being a Black person here, there's already things that are set against us. You have there's a school to prison pipeline which tests children as early as second grade to decide whether or not they're going to go to prison, and even with that system, the rate of going back to jail, I just think specifically as a Black male, the rate to go back to jail is so high because they watch you. Everything that you do is so like nitpicky. Everything that you do, you can go back, and it starts as early as teenage years. You go to juvenile detention center. If you commit a crime, go to juvenile detention center, and once you get out after 16, they can start tracking you up to keep you in that system. So once you turn 18, they can put you back. And I think that I have 2 older brothers. I'm the only girl in my family, so I have 2 older brothers, and that has been something of interest to me because I care about the Black youth. And just knowing how, my brothers would feel if that was happening to them is very impactful to me in a teenage years, just having to be on edge all the time or being scared to go into a store because someone's going to follow you and think that you're stealing something, going into or driving your car. Some people have very nice cars and drive their car and getting pulled over because the police officer thinks that you stole it. So they're asking for all this identification confirmation that you have to prove that this is your car. And that can take a real toll on teenagers who are like, oh, I worked hard to buy this car and now I'm getting stopped because they think that I stole it. Like, what does that say about how they look at me? They think that I'm a bad person, so I must be a bad person, even if I'm doing everything right to get out of that. It's still coming back on me. They're still looking at me as, oh, you're a Black man. You're going to steal. You're going to shoot people. You're going to kill people. And that's big. And even for Black women, I feel like it's hard because not only in the US am I Black, but I'm also a woman. So I'm a Black woman. So I'm also already seen as sort of less than because I'm a woman. We don't have the same pay scales as men. And then it's just harder for Black women to express themselves without being called angry or the angry
dramatic.
So like the angry Black woman sort of persona that they try to kind of wrap Black women in when we get passionate about something or we want to express ourselves or call somebody out for disrespecting us. And that can start early. So I think that depressed teens may go through that or it may affect their sense of identity. Like Jarrell said, if they're already struggling with something on the inside, these things can just further them into that depression if they're trying to make changes for themselves.
I agree completely. Thank you, Jasmine. And Jarrell, would you like to add anything to this question?
Yeah, I can just build on that a little bit because, like in the UK, I think Mind did a survey in 2021, and it surveyed, I think, school kids who had experienced racism, and it showed that 70% of those kids had heightened mental health issues as a result of that racism that they experience. So there's a direct scientific correlation, like just right there.
Yeah.
And then these kids go on to be excluded from school as well.
Yeah.
because of their mental health issues. Because Black people are always seen as aggressive. We were just touching on this earlier. So if you got an angry, depressed, anxious kid full of childhood trauma
Yes.
without the emotional vocabulary to express themselves, from a culture that says don't talk to people about your emotions, and it's a shame if you do, then what are they going to do? They're going to lash out in class, act a fool, and then get excluded. And then from that exclusion compounds it, because from exclusion, then they're more likely, because Black people are already more likely to experience mental health services through the criminal justice route
Yeah.
or the social services route than our
Yeah.
white counterparts. And there's a massive difference in that.
Yeah.
So from that it goes into exclusion, and then that puts them into a system immediately that
Yeah.
it makes it difficult for us to break from, you
Yeah.
know. And then we have those myths surrounding it as well, because in our culture, I mean, it's on my t-shirt, we say therapy is not for Black people, but we need to qualify it. We need to say white talking therapy is not for Black people. Because if we just say therapy is not for Black people, or therapy is a white thing, then that's what perpetuates these cycles. You know, and if these systems and institutions were once used as tools to oppress us, and they haven't been, you know, revolutionized or updated or made equal or fair, then it just, you know, you can see a sequence of events happening, you know, and a chain that can't be broken, because we just get sucked back into it, because we learn our culture from our parents and our family and our community, and our culture is an intrinsic part of our identity. We can't separate that. So when you're working with an individual and you're trying to get to the nub of an issue, and you bypass their culture, then you might as well just pack the therapy in and give them a refund.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to hit the mark. And then it's going to take so much longer for you to even get anywhere. And meanwhile, these people come from lower socioeconomic statuses already. So it's further excluding us from therapy again, because we can't already afford it. But it takes longer because we have to explain it to the white therapist. And that's the UK. Luckily, Nigeria and Africa is a different situation. You've got that cultural consciousness down. But over here, as a Black person, you're more likely to experience racism or stereotyping or microaggression in the therapy room. I experienced it personally about 3 or 4 times from different therapists, calling me aggressive, you know, ending therapy abruptly after the first session and saying, not giving me a reason to want to work with me again, you know. So until these things are highlighted, you know, because if I wasn't trained to be a therapist whilst all of this happened, I would have stuck to the myth that, therapy is a white people thing. Because I just tried it and that was horrible.
Right.
Yeah.
And the woman who was asking me these probing questions was a white woman who didn't get me at all. So I spent most of the therapy session explaining myself to her.
Yes.
Who's got time for that?
Can I say something?
Yeah, please do.
I think that's so important what you just said about your therapist understanding you, because I think that all Black people should have Black therapists, because there is little to no way that you are going to come into a setting with a white therapist and you are going to get that immediate empathy and that immediate understanding and be able to hit the ground running with talking about your feelings and what you're going through from a cultural background, and have that progression with a white therapist, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that you know, Jarrell has it on your website. I'm not even going to try and quote it, but I know that it's on your website. But it's one of those things that I'll get you. You don't have to go through the cultural nuances. I will just understand from a place of knowing and understanding. I've kind of summarized it there, but I remember seeing
that's it. You nailed it. I use that version instead.
Sounds like something I would love to adopt, Gerald. You could drop a link to your website.
Sharing is caring.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, it's very true. And I think, you know, because we are, and I can speak from a person that is in a predominantly white country, that being in this country, you know, by default minoritizes us. But it's very hard to find safe spaces to be able to speak about culturally specific issues that we may be facing, or even just general issues that impact us differently because of our culture, and be able to have that immediate connection, and sound advice that is culturally appropriate, culturally sensitive, culturally relevant, to be able to have any meaningful impact in your life. So I'm going to move on to the next question now, and this one is going to be directed at Abby. Where do the differences lie in intergenerational understanding and acceptance and knowledge to address depressed teenagers?